she stands before the mirror. Not to admire, not even to judge, but to check. Check if her smile looks real enough. Check if her skin is smooth enough. Check if her appearance is, at the very least, acceptable enough to not invite commentary. But here's the tragedy. Somewhere along the way, she stopped looking for herself and started scanning for someone else's approval. This mirror has become a courtroom, and beauty is the silent trial she's never exempt from. The currency of beauty. In a world that capitalizes on attention, a woman's beauty often becomes her unchosen currency. It's not just a compliment anymore, it's an expectation, a social debt, a performance that never ends. From childhood, many girls are told they're pretty before they're ever called brave, clever, or capable. The world conditions them to value how they appear more than how they think or feel. Beauty becomes a gateway to approval, safety, or love. While aging, weight gain, or imperfection feel like violations of an unspoken contract. So, she learns to monitor, to manage, to modify. She learns to keep her body in check the way others keep their bank accounts, obsessively and fearfully. And if the world keeps rewarding her when she fits the mold, she keeps chasing the mold, even if it costs her her sanity. The disconnection that looks like perfection. What we often interpret as confidence in beautiful women is sometimes a mask, polished, rehearsed, and brittle. Beneath the flawless contour and curated Instagram feed, many women are quietly suffering, not from narcissism, but from emotional starvation. They've learned to be admired instead of being known. They smile on cue. They flirt to survive. They hide their sadness beneath filters, their exhaustion behind concealer. Because being beautiful buys attention, but it rarely buys understanding. So, while the world applauds their glow, no one sees the panic when they wake up bloated, the shame when their skin breaks out, the fear of no longer being seen once they age past society's favor. They are haunted by the question, if I'm no longer beautiful, will I still matter? When appearance becomes identity, when someone is praised mostly for how they look, their sense of worth gets braided into their image. She doesn't just wear makeup, she becomes the makeup. She doesn't just pose, she becomes the pose. It's not about expression anymore, it's about erasure. Each layer of aesthetic polish erases another flicker of internal life. She starts silencing her opinions if they're too loud, hiding her anger if it makes her less feminine, shrinking her appetite, her voice, her desires. Not because she doesn't feel them, but because she was taught that the cost of being fully herself might be too high. So, she adapts. She becomes palatable, desirable, safe. And the more she fits in, the less she feels like she exists. The inner collapse. No one sees you won't see the breaking point on her face. It shows up in subtler ways. In her growing fatigue after social gatherings. In her dread of being perceived without makeup. In the way she overthinks every photo before posting. Her relationships start to feel performative. Friendships become comparisons. Compliments sound like traps. She becomes trapped in a game where the rules keep shifting. Today's standard is not good enough tomorrow. Beauty is a moving target, and aging is a sin that no filter can atone for. The worst part? She might not even realize this prison exists because it was built with praise, not punishment. The cost of being beautiful enough. This is the paradox. The more she succeeds at being beautiful, the more invisible her inner world becomes. No one asks how she feels. No one wonders what she's afraid of. No one checks if she's happy beneath the perfection. Instead, people assume she's beautiful. She must have it all. But beauty doesn't shield you from emptiness. In fact, for many women, it deepens it. Because their beauty is admired, not witnessed. And when you're constantly seen for how you look, but never for who you are, a certain kind of loneliness sets in. The kind that no amount of likes can touch. No one tells her this directly, but she learns. She learns that being beautiful makes people nicer, that it opens doors in school, in offices, in relationships, that her value seems to rise the thinner, younger, and more agreeable she becomes. And when you realize that people treat you better when you perform a version of beauty they recognize, you start to make that performance your identity. The social rewards of self-erasion. She becomes fluent in a language of adaptation, smiling when she's uncomfortable, laughing when she's disrespected, pretending she doesn't mind being stared at, flirted with, or praised only for her looks. Why? Because this kind of beauty buys safety. It softens tension. It earns approval. It keeps her from being questioned, challenged, or dismissed. But what begins as a strategic adjustment soon becomes habitual. The mask fuses with her skin. She doesn't know where the performance ends and her real self begins. Over time, this adaptation is mistaken for personality. She's described as easygoing, polite, pleasant, when really she's exhausted, censored, diminished. She doesn't feel safe being complicated, angry, or assertive. So she edits herself out of the picture and only leaves the parts that the world applauds. The slow disappearance of the self. This isn't vanity, it's survival. She's not obsessed with beauty because she's shallow. She's obsessed because she's been told, over and over, that beauty is her best shot at being loved, being chosen, being safe. So she becomes a master of optics. She hides her fatigue behind concealer, her loneliness behind selfies, her self-doubt behind curated perfection. But while she polishes the image, something inside begins to dim. Her opinions get quieter, her desires less clear, her body more foreign. She starts forgetting what she actually wants, because she's so used to anticipating what others want to see. And that loss is quiet, but brutal. The shame of aging in a youth-obsessed culture. Time, once neutral, becomes her greatest enemy. Every wrinkle feels like a betrayal. Every grey hair a warning sign. Every birthday a countdown. She starts mourning her reflection before it even changes, because she's been taught that her worth has an expiration date. The world doesn't just praise youth, it punishes the lack of it. Middle-aged women don't disappear. They're erased, brushed aside, treated as irrelevant, invisible, dried up. So she invests in creams, filters, surgeries, not always out of vanity, but out of fear. Fear of being passed over. Fear of no longer being praised. Fear of becoming someone the world no longer looks at. This is not about aesthetics. It's about survival in a culture that equates beauty with belonging. When femininity is weaponized against you, she doesn't hate being beautiful. She hates what beauty has cost her. The pressure to always look put together. The unsolicited opinions about her body. The double bind of being called vain for caring and lazy for not. She walks a razor-thin line. Dress up? She's trying too hard. Dress down? She's letting herself go. Speak up? She's aggressive. Stay quiet? She's just a pretty face. Her existence is politicized, commodified, sexualized, never simply respected. And while everyone benefits from her beauty, few bother to ask how she's doing behind it. The invisible labor of being beautiful. Here's what often goes unseen: the constant upkeep, the social vigilance, the emotional labor of always appearing fine. She becomes her own brand manager, her own stylist, her own PR agent, not for fun, but for survival. Because for women in many environments, being unkempt isn't neutral, it's risky. People listen differently, respect differently, treat you differently based on how well you play the game. So she keeps playing, but every round takes something from her. A bit more time, a bit more energy, a bit more of her authenticity, until she forgets she was ever playing a game at all, and believes this is who she's supposed to be. At first, it's subtle. She forgets her appointments, laughs at jokes that don't land, struggles to get out of bed, not because she's tired, but because she feels nothing at all. She's still smiling, still showing up, but her inner world is unraveling like a sweater snagged on a hidden nail. And no one sees it, because the costume still fits. But beneath the surface, the weight of emotional neglect, self-erasure, and the quiet suppression of feelings begins to build. She's a fortress of composure, but the cracks in her emotional armor are widening, one day at a time. The breaking point. No one expects people are shocked when the put-together one falls apart. She always seemed so strong. She was so organized, so upbeat. No one saw it coming. Of course they didn't. She was taught that breakdowns are weaknesses, that expressing pain makes you a burden, that to be loved, you must remain composed, perfect, unbothered. So she smiled through heartbreak, hosted dinners after panic attacks, answered emails while quietly grieving. She perfected the art of masking, of performing wellness when her spirit felt suffocated. Until one day, she couldn't anymore, not because something extraordinary happened, but because nothing changed. And she couldn't pretend anymore. Her body starts to whisper truths her mouth can't say. Tight chest, sudden tears, crippling fatigue, anxiety attacks in the cereal aisle. The pain is no longer something she can push down. It rises up, insistent, uninvited, and undeniable. Emotional numbness as a survival reflex. She thought she was fine because she wasn't crying. But numbness is not peace. It's the body hitting mute because the volume of pain was too loud for too long. She didn't forget how to feel. She just learned it wasn't safe to feel. As a child, when she cried, she was told she was too sensitive. When she got angry, she was punished. When she asked for comfort, she was shamed. So she buried those needs so deeply, even she stopped recognizing them. And as an adult, she became an expert in emotional erasure. She learned to suppress her feelings to keep the peace, to fit the role of the good girl, the easygoing one, the understanding one. Her emotions were secondary. She was secondary. Her body began to speak the truth she wasn't allowed to. And now, her body aches, trembles, and whispers with feelings she hadn't known how to name for years. She starts to feel the depth of all the years she pushed herself down, the years she minimized her needs, her desires, her pain. And now that she's awake, it's too much to ignore. Rage, the first emotion to escape. For many women, the first sign of awakening isn't peace, it's rage. Rage at the years spent pretending. Rage at being told to smile through her grief. Rage at the world for teaching her that being a woman meant being constantly small. Small in her emotions, small in her needs, small in her truth. This rage doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it's walking away mid-conversation, cancelling a dinner last minute, refusing to smile when she's not okay. It's standing up for herself, even when the room grows silent. The rage is not only aimed outward, it's also aimed inward. At the years, she gave away pieces of herself for the sake of keeping everyone else happy. At the years, she spent pretending to be what the world wanted her to be. Quiet, agreeable, soft. It's an anger that cleanses, an anger that demands respect, not in an explosive way, but in a quiet, relentless decision to reclaim herself. This rage is not destruction, it's resurrection. It's the fire that burns the false images, the fragile identity that wasn't truly hers, and reveals the woman she was always meant to be beneath it all. The messy middle of self-discovery. She doesn't become free overnight. There's a phase in between, where she's no longer who she was, but not yet who she'll become. Where the makeup feels like a mask, but she's not ready to remove it. Where the people around her start saying, "You've changed," and they don't mean it kindly, and they're right. She has. She's no longer performing politeness at the expense of her spirit. She's no longer dimming her light to comfort others. She's no longer spending hours editing photos to look acceptable. This middle space is awkward, lonely, unstable. It feels raw, unfamiliar. She's reclaiming pieces of herself that were lost, but she doesn't know yet how to wear them. She doesn't know what life feels like when she isn't living for someone else's approval. She doesn't know what it's like to feel her worth without seeking external validation. But the more she trusts herself, the more she realizes that she was never truly lost. She was only buried, and the act of unearthing herself is something she can't rush. She must let the process happen in its own time. In this messy middle, she's like a sculptor working with rough clay. She doesn't know exactly what the final form will look like, but every chip of the hammer, every rough edge, softened, brings her closer to the woman she's meant to be. Naming the pain is the start of healing. She begins to say things she never dared to say. "I'm not okay. I feel disconnected. I don't know who I am without their praise." These aren't breakdowns, they're breakthroughs. Naming her pain is the first step in reclaiming herself. For years, she was conditioned to push down her feelings, to swallow her truth, to keep the peace at all costs. But now, the truth refuses to stay hidden. She doesn't need to know the whole story yet. She just needs to stop pretending there isn't one. She doesn't need all the answers immediately. She just needs to admit that the silence has been louder than the truth. Because the more she acknowledges her pain, the more she realizes how much strength she's been hiding beneath the layers of self-protection. And that strength, that's who she truly is. The journey to reclaim yourself isn't about perfection. It's not about having it all together or fitting neatly into society's idea of strong or successful. It's about breaking free from the scripts that have been written for you by others and choosing the life that aligns with your truth, no matter how messy, how imperfect. And that choice is often terrifying. Because when you stop performing, when you stop showing up as the version of yourself that others expect, there's a moment of free fall. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the emotional chaos that comes with leaving behind what no longer serves you. But that chaos isn't destruction, it's rebirth. The fear of rejection. When you start saying no, as she begins to set boundaries, the world reacts. People are shocked, some are angry, some feel hurt. When you've been the go-to person for so long, whether it's for emotional labor, for validation, or for love, it's disorienting when you start saying, I can't do this anymore. It's disorienting because you've conditioned everyone around you to believe that your value lies in your ability to serve them, to accommodate them, to disappear into their needs. Now, when you start saying no, when you stop taking on everyone else's emotions, some will question you. They'll call you selfish, difficult, demanding. But this is the truth. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not demanding for asking to be treated with the same respect you've shown others. The world may react negatively, and at first, that's the hardest part. You'll feel guilty. You'll second-guess yourself. But in those moments, you must remember, this is not a rejection of others. This is a reclamation of your time, your energy, your emotional bandwidth. And that act of reclaiming yourself is the beginning of emotional liberation. The power of saying, I'm enough, without proof. For so long, you believed that your worth was something to be earned, that you had to prove your value with actions, by being helpful, by being agreeable, by being perfect. You were conditioned to believe that your body, your smile, your behavior had to be just right to receive love, attention, and approval. But what if you were enough just as you are, without needing to prove it? When you start telling yourself, I am enough, even when I'm not perfect, the world begins to change. You stop feeling like you're in a constant race to prove something. You stop sacrificing your comfort for others' approval. You stop believing that love only comes with conditions. And most importantly, you begin to embody that truth. Not just say it, not just believe it, but feel it in your bones, in your body, in the way you walk into a room. You are enough, and you don't need to explain it. Rebuilding the relationship with your own emotions. One of the most profound shifts in this journey is learning how to feel your feelings. For so long, emotions were a threat. They were inconvenient. They were weaknesses. But now, you begin to welcome them. Not as enemies to be fought off, but as messages to be heard. She stops avoiding her anger. She stops running from her grief. She stops silencing her joy because it might look too much. Instead, she allows all her emotions to coexist in the same space, without shame. Anger isn't a villain. It's a tool. It's a boundary. It tells you when you've been wronged, when you've been pushed too far. Sadness isn't weakness. It's release. It's the cleansing storm that makes way for something new. Joy isn't indulgence. It's vitality. It's the energy that comes when you align with who you truly are. And when you allow these emotions to exist in you, fully and freely, you feel whole again. You stop compartmentalizing your heart. You stop suppressing parts of yourself. You finally become integrated, mind, body, and soul. Letting go of people who aren't ready for your whole self. As you change, your relationships will shift. Not all of them will survive the process. Some people will try to hold you to the version of yourself that was convenient to them. Some will try to pull you back into the box that kept them comfortable. But here's the truth. You cannot apologize for growing. You cannot shrink yourself to make others feel at ease. You cannot continue to sacrifice your truth for their comfort. And it's not about cutting people off. It's about understanding that not everyone will be able to grow with you. Some people will leave, and others will stay, but only if they can meet the truest version of you. And that is when real love begins. Embracing freedom over perfection. There's a powerful freedom that comes with letting go of the pursuit of perfection. Freedom from the endless chase to measure up to external standards. Freedom from the invisible chains that kept you bound to the approval of others. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you stop measuring your worth by what others see in you. And instead, you begin to measure it by how you see yourself. You begin to make decisions from a place of power. Your power. You choose peace over performance. You choose authenticity over perfection. You choose truth over illusion. And when you do this, you give yourself permission to live fully, without apology, without fear, and without holding back. reclaiming your voice and your body. In reclaiming your emotions, you also reclaim your voice. You begin speaking up, not just for others, but for yourself. You stop shrinking your voice to make others comfortable. You stop silencing your opinions because you don't want to be too much. You stop apologizing for your emotions because they are valid. You stop excusing your needs as extra or too demanding. You start using your voice to claim your space in the world. You start using it to protect your boundaries. You start using it to say, "This is me, and I am enough." And in doing so, you give others permission to do the same. You become the model of what it looks like to love yourself without conditions. You become the example of what happens when a woman finally takes up the space she was always meant to occupy. The new freedom of being fully alive. You are no longer confined by the definitions of who you should be. You are not your body. You are not your performance. You are not the roles you've played. You are the soul that inhabits this body. You are the voice that chooses its own words. You are the truth that lies beneath the surface. And with each passing day, you shed the layers that weren't yours to begin with. And what's left is the most authentic version of yourself. The version that has always been worthy of love, respect, and honor. Not because you perform for it, but because you are it.提示：每分钟视频课容，那约IT个字。